Alright, welcome back, Retro Gamers. So today we're going to look at Batocera, and we're going to install it in RetroNAS. So if you don't know how to set up RetroNAS, I have a video listed up above, and I encourage you to go watch that. Then you can kind of come back and watch this video. So let's get started. So you can tell that I have mine, Batocera, running in VirtualBox. I did this just for I can display this on the screen, but you can have yours running on your Raspberry Pi or an x86 system or whatever system that you have. Alright, so the first thing I want to show you here is that over here we have 13 games. So if you look under all games, we have 13 games, and when we set this up, that number is going to change. Alright, so to get started here, what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to our Unraid and make sure that we're in our virtual machine tab up here. Then we're going to go to RetroNAS because we're going to need the IP address to connect. So if I click on this and I go to the console, I have the RetroNAS login screen right there. Now I could type in IP address and then show my IP address, or I can just go into RetroNAS itself and just go RetroNAS and then just kind of jump in here, and I have my IP address up here, 192.168.2.17. That's the IP address that we want. Now I'm going to cancel out of this, but again, remember your IP address. Now, if I go over here to our shares, and I have my RetroNAS like over here, and I can click on this, and I can see my file structure. Now, I don't want to share it from the Unraid here. I want to share it through the virtual machine, so that's why I got the IP address from the virtual machine. Now, to test that out, I can go to my PC, and let me bring this over, and I can type in //192.168.2.17, and I click on that, and it's asking me for my credentials. The reason why it's asking me for the credentials is because I'm going directly to the virtual machine, and remember we set it up with RetroNAS, and the password's RetroNAS. And I'll just hit OK. And see, it brings me in here, so I got my Batocera, and I got my information right there reading directly from the virtual machine that's pointing back to the Unraid folder if I can have the bigger storage. Now, one thing that I do want to show you is that if we go with / retro SMB, if you followed my video before, yours will be / retro SMB as well, and you can enter that and it goes directly into here. Now, usually you want to use the retro SMB, you want to use the host name instead of the IP address. That way, if your host name changes, if your IP address changes, it will still pick up because it's reading from your host name. Now, with that said, let's go into our command prompt, and we'll have to log into Batocera to make sure that it can read our share drives. Alright, so I open up my command prompt, and then what I want to do is I want to type in SSH root at Batocera. Now, I kept my Batocera at the default setting. I didn't change the host name. I didn't change the password or anything. I just kept everything as default for the tutorial. But, in production and stuff like that, I would obviously change that just to make it secure. So if I go ahead and hit enter from here, it's going to ask me for my password. Well, if you didn't change anything, the default password for Batocera is Linux. That's Linux. And then default password. And then there we are. So we're in the system. So we're ready to go. So we don't need to be in this user data / system because that's not where our config file is. So our config file, we need to back up. So we're going to go back up 2 directories, and then we're there. Now, if I wanted to do ls to list my directories, I can see what directories I have in there. You can do that, but I know it's in boot. So I'm going to go cd boot. Alright, so now that I'm here, now there's one step that I need to take before I move forward. And what that is I have to mount my drive. Well, remount it. So as you know that the system's running. So we're over here obviously because it's running because we're logged into it, but VirtualBox is running and I need to mount that boot drive. So I'm going to go ahead and remount it. If you miss this step and you don't remount it, you're not going to be able to update the config file. So now the config file, if I just do an ls, it's that Batocera boot config file. So what I want to do is I want to type in nano to get to my editor, and then I'm going to go ahead and not do that. Let me go back, nano, and then I do the Batocera, and I hit enter here. Now I'm here. 2 steps that we need to take, right? Over here, instead of internal, we want to change that to network. And if we look up at like there, network, use the network share, that's where we want to be. Share device equals network. Now, if I go down here to the share weight equals 15, that is 15 seconds. That's you need the share weight because sometimes when you boot up, it's not going to read your share drive right away. So we want it to wait at least 15 seconds to make sure the drives spin up. Now, if it's slow, you can change that to 25, 35, or 30, or whatever you want to change it to. All right. And so now we have it for network. Now we have the share. Now, what we need to do is, remember I told you to keep your IP. So I'm going to copy and paste over here, and then I'm going to walk through this real quick. So, okay. So this is my share network underscore SMB1 equals ROMs, because that's my ROMs directory that I wanted to bring in the ROM. So Batocera, once that all capitalized, knows what comes next is going to be into your ROMs. So what I have over here is I got the 192.168.2.17. That's the IP address, and again, that's the one that's coming from the virtual machine that's pointing back to the unraid share drives. So then do the colon and Batocera ROMs. So if I go back to my drives here, and let me go back over here. So I got RetroNAS and I got Batocera. Now I could have went to RetroNAS and Batocera. I could went in that way, but the way I'm going in is just directly into the Batocera folder. And then if I notice my ROMs is capitalized here. And then we have it going over here. That's where I have Batocera /ROMs. The last thing is that you remember we have this set up with the password. So we got to do username equals RetroNAS, comma, password equals RetroNAS. That way we can go in there and it self-authenticates. And that's pretty much it to set up the on the ROMs. Now, if I want to set up the BIOS, for example, I could right click this and I can go back here and change this to BIOS, and I can change this to BIOS, and we have to change this to 2, right, because that's our second share. So we got share 1 and share 2, and then again this like reads the BIOS, and then this reads the ROMs. Now you can do the same thing with saves and anything else that you want to do inside inside Batocera. This will get you set up. Now what you should do is, instead of using this 192.168.2.177, you should type in like retro SMB, but for some reason I couldn't get the host name to work on mine, so I had to go back to the IP address. Now I don't know why that is, but you know, I just marked this as a static IP, so I'm not going to have that problem, you know, for now. So mine's always going to be, you know, that number. So set that for static if you're going to use this. If not, if you can get the host name to work, you know, let me know. So anyway, I'm going to hit Control X, and I'm going to hit yes, and we're going to save this, right? So now we're going back over here to Batocera. And you're like, well, wait a minute, we just changed stuff. Why do we have 13 games still? Well, because we have to reboot. So if I quit and I restart the system, yes, I really want to restart, and then we're going to keep this going, and it's going to log into Batocera, and then when it's up, it should show us a less amount of games because I don't have that many on the share drive. So we'll look at it, and then there it goes, reading the drives, and you notice I only have 7 games, so it's reading from those share drives. So if I look at it like so, this is like all games, and then I got like the PC Engine 1 game, and then the ports are just the games that come with it, and then the Pi game. So that's pretty much it. And if I go back to my share drive and I look into my ROMs, and I go down here to the PC folder, go down to PC Engine, and I just have that 1 game right there. Now, you know, if you looked at the previous video when I looked at, like, you know, managing my ROMs, I have, let's see if I have it handy here. I do not. Interesting. But I'll just go to my mad test here. I'll go to my retro gaming, and then my ROM root. I got a couple of Atari games here, so I'm just going to copy these Atari games, and then I'm going to come back to my Batocera, go back to my ROMs, go down to my Atari 2600, and I'm just going to paste those in here. And you know, your games, you know, I don't know where your games are located at, but we'll wait for this to copy over, and then we'll move on. So now that they're copied over, we'll go back over to Batocera. Let's see, that one right there. And you're like, well, wait a minute, we don't have any games. Well, that's because either we have to restart it, or we just go down here to game settings and update game list, and then we redo it. And now I should have my Atari. So I got those 4 games on Atari now. So I click on that and just throw it up there just to make sure it works. And then there it is. It's working from the remote section. And that's pretty much it. So that's how you set up your NAS to work with Batocera. So have a good day.